right, everybody, welcome back to the Funky Intellect. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Jotina Buck, a remarkable individual with over 15 years of education experience, counseling experience everywhere, psychology, the study of human behavior, etc. Jotina is deeply passionate about fostering healthy and thriving ecosystems in education and nurturing communities. She is an advocate for body kindness, mental health care, and the importance of play, which I love. Also, creating safe spaces. Jotina brings a wealth of knowledge and a commitment to build communities that matter. I'm very happy and honored to have you on the Funky Intellect.
I'm excited to be here and excited to share. Thank you for having me. I always think about that role in education. I was in education for 12 years, transitioned from education during the pandemic. And today I serve as a licensed professional counselor, yoga guide, and a somatic psychedelic facilitator and meditation and breathwork guide.
I am so impressed with what you have accomplished and what you decided to journey into. Like, you have a really big breadth of things that you kind of understand. And so just from me to you, I'm very impressed, happy that you're here on the planet deciding to, build and give to people. So I appreciate that very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very much. So you are here today to talk about community. One of your, I guess I can call them a pillar.
Yes.
Creating community. I think I thrive at bringing people together, and it's fun for me to see those connections made and different things like that. And through watching your journey, that has been a consistent, I don't know, I really kind of want to call it a lifeline. I feel like community is a lifeline for people. And so we're here to talk about community and maybe how people can build their own community. Recently, you took, I don't know, a leap of faith. Can I call it a leap of faith with your move?
It still is a leap of faith. Yes.
Okay, an active leap of faith,
Yes.
moving to Mexico
Yes.
during the pandemic.
No, actually, I moved to Mexico December of 2023.
Okay.
So a little
You know
bit
what?
over.
I knew it had been a year and some change.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your decision to move and leaving the community, here in Houston. Just tell me a little bit more about it.
Yeah, I would love to tell you a little bit more about it. And also, I really don't describe it as leaving my community. I describe it more so as expanding that community, right? And creating space for them to find home even here, right? Where I am now, and creating safe space for us even beyond America. This is a 23-year dream, a 20-year dream that I'm living in today. Many may not know this, but I went to Baptist school, Baptist college. I engaged in mission trips very early on, and I was at Houston Baptist University. At the time, I went on a mission trip to Nicaragua. And at that time, I was a mother. I just had Lauren. I was just barely 21. And I went to Nicaragua, and there were these 18-year-olds who were like on gap years. And I'm like, how can they afford to go on a gap year? Like, oh my God, But I had never heard of that before,
Yeah.
And I remember going back to my little dorm where we were staying, and I wrote in my journal, I said, when Lauren goes to college, I'm going to take a reverse gap year. I'm going to create my own gap year when I turn 40.
That is amazing.
Yeah. And so, time passed, years passed. Lauren went off to college to Clark Atlanta. And I remember waking up, we had dropped her off back in July. And I remember waking up in September of 2023. And I got on the phone and called my realtor, a good friend of mine, Chase Sloan. And I said, hey, Chase, I'm selling this house. And she was like, oh, okay. What are we doing? We moving to the city now since the baby's gone to college? And I was like, no, actually, I'm moving out of the country. And it was just this unction from spirit, like, okay, you'll be 40 in a few months. Lauren has gone to college. And it was that old dream that was kind of, awakened from its nap that had been taking for 20 years. And in that moment, I knew, because spirit quickly reminded me of it. I'd bought some land here in Mexico in July, but I didn't buy the land with the intention to move here. I bought it in Puerto Morelos. I had a vision, and still am holding the vision for my mental health practice, Root Wellness, to build a retreat facility. And I was like, yeah, we'll build a retreat facility there at some point, but it's there And Spirit said, no, and you need to be tethered, right, to that. And I picked up everything. We put the house on the market to sell. It sold in just a couple of weeks, and I closed on the house, selling the house December 21st of 2023. And I was on an airplane December 22nd with 6
Oh,
bags,
wow.
backpack, and a hat box on my way here. I came into Puerto Morelos to take a look at the land, my feet on the land and the light. I was trying to decide if I would go like to Cancun, Tulum, or Playa del Carmen. And Playa del Carmen, I'd never been here before, never visited before, had never been on my radar before. And
Oh, wow.
I'm going to plant roots there. I felt guided to plant my roots here. And I moved here sight unseen. I'd never been here before, and uprooted my life. And so an act of obedience.
Wow. Answer this for me. Okay. So since this was a dream no longer deferred, right? Like we're
Yeah.
living in it. I think it's so interesting that the land you purchased was already set in stone to build community. So have you always, of course, I've known you for, like from here and there, like around just community, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Does the idea of community or the concept or just the love of community, has that always just been rooted in you from little to Houston to beyond? When did you make that connection? Like, okay, this is what this is. I like bringing people together. I consciously had to be like, well, Joy, why are you always connecting dots for people? So it was a very intentional, let me dissect why I do what I do.
Yeah.
Tell me about how that came up for you.
Yeah. So how that came up for me is I am one of 12. I'm the baby of 12.
Oh,
So I have
okay.
11 siblings. My mother is one of 17. My dad is one of 11. So the cousins in them was always pulled.
Okay.
You know what I
Okay.
mean?
Yes. Born into a large community. Wow.
Yeah. And I often, both my mom and dad, who are ancestor now, I often, when I'm writing and just like capturing what community is, I often return to give thanks to my ancestors, to both my mom and dad, just teaching me how to do community very well. Right. And they not only did community very well within our house and within our families, both of them were, matriarchal, patriarchal figures of their family, webs and networks and organized family reunions and all the things. My father was a pastor. And so we spent a lot of time in church, and anything about Black church, right? We know how to gather. We know how to build support. In some instances, build that emotional safety and belonging, and be in these reciprocal, purpose-filled relationships that are mutually beneficial. And so I credit being able to show up in the ways that I do today in community to my mom and my dad. And yeah, they did
That's
it like
awesome.
no other.
That is awesome. Have you already had cousins and stuff come visit you in Mexico?
I have. I hosted my daughter's birthday here, and her sister cousins, my nieces, and some of my friends. There were maybe about 15 or so of us. We gathered. So yes, the people are coming to visit.
So your idea of this kind of like unlocks another layer for me, because I didn't know about you purchasing the land before. And so it just makes me think, okay, when you are thinking about community just in general, right? You have community, your expanded community, right? You opening us up. We can be here, or we can be there. Is the focus everybody coming over? Or are you specifically like, okay, my people in Houston, my stateside people, I want y'all to come feel some release, decompress, regulate your nervous system? Or is it wherever you are, whoever you are, Black expat or American native or someone there, because you've been making connections in Mexico as well? What's your what's your focus been, or has there been any specific community you've looked at and said, you know what, they need it? You know what I mean? Like, what's the, I don't want to say you cater to a specific person.
I do, though. I do.
Okay.
Confused. I'm very clear that anything that I'm called to create and nurture is for Black people, and for queer folk, for the LGBTQIA plus folks in my community, for trans folks, my trans siblings. And I'm really, really clear on that when it comes to like the work of building and creating community. I do believe that we deserve, while there is inclusivity within, the fundamental principle of what community is, I do believe within those subgroups, there is space to get really clear for exclusivity, for safety purposes, for identifying and identity purposes. And I have a sense of knowing that I am here to be a Black auntie, a Black sister, lots of those that need, and that safe and soft space for us to land in a world that is just so, so, so hard on bodies of culture and Black bodies and folks who live on the margins of society.
I love that. I always say that Black people, we're so busy living, right? Doing the day to day and all that comes with the day to day and continuing to exist, that we don't get time to dream and we don't get time to sit down and you know what I mean? And as I go about life and I see instances, I'm like, they just living. We just one foot in front of the other, just living. So I love that. We need that. So important. I'm very happy to have you.
When you talk about like Black people just living, I have this commitment to like seeing Black people resting, right? There are several images that I have because I think there is something to be said about, yes, just living and moving through our lives, but there's something about the safety to be able to pause, not just in our homes, in our silos, and in these spaces that, we've created safety in, but in these communal spaces, right? Because community is about the whole. It is about the group. Right? It is about the collective and having space where folks can pause, and live through resting, live through regulated nervous systems, right? Live through healthy relationships and understanding how to move through their human relationships. And Better Human is my life's work and why I'm here.
Do you think there are essential ingredients, I would say, to building community? Now, you were born into a big one already, right? And so when you step outside of that to friendships, building and choosing friendships, do you think that there are essential things that need to be addressed to, I guess, properly build that community that actually nourishes you? Because I guess people can have community that is just going to pull on them, right? Like pull energy in a negative way. So do you think there are essential things that you need in community that's a give and receive?
Yeah. So I want to say two things. The first thing I want to say is when you talk about like being in these communal relationships where people are pulling from you, right? And, you're giving more than you are receiving. I think there is space for us to really interrogate what it is that we call community. Just because you call it community doesn't make it community, right? Just because you are gathered with a group of people, right, even if there's some sameness and some belonging, doesn't necessarily make it community. There are a few fundamental factors that I believe are really important in building community. And the first two fundamental factors that are important is connection and relationship. Right. And gathering is one thing, building a relationship is something else, right? And as human beings, we're innately social, right? Inherently social beings, and we want connection, right? We are creatures of connection. And so two fundamental principles are connection and relationship. The other fundamental principles are contribution. And I think we forget about that part sometimes, right? And purpose, right? In order for, and what I think about like the evolutionary history of what it means to like be human and for us to be Black. In order for us to survive, we had to move as a group, right? We needed the group to survive. The individual needed the group to survive, right? And so, and within that group, we made contributions, or there were contributions that were made. And so reciprocal relationship is important in building community and mutually beneficial relationships. So when we start talking about those one-sided, relationships where you walk away feeling depleted and feeling drained, I would encourage people to really interrogate, is that really community, right? And if it is community, is it equitable community, right? Because that equity is important for, I believe, the whole to stand. And so having purpose and shared meaning is really important. And then the last two are just validation and recognition. Everybody wants to feel heard. Everybody wants to feel seen. People want to feel valued, and they want to feel like they are a part of a group of people that fully understand who they are, how they show up in the world, why they move the way they move, talk the way they talk, what their needs,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And that's a critical component of what it means to build community. And so those are some fundamental principles that I believe are important because it's not just about gathering in a group, but ensuring that there's connection, relationship, purpose, and contribution, validation, and recognition.
I think those are all very valid, great points. I've heard people be concerned with. To me, it's a little silly, but I understand where people are coming from when they say, "Oh, friendship is not exchange. You don't want to feel like you're using someone." And so, I I love your point where it's like, well, why are you here? Why are we here?
Yeah.
And then what are we giving each other? There's a difference between, and you could probably put this in better words, but there's a difference between using someone, right? And they just, you just bleeding them dry. You know what I mean? Whatever you need, it's all about them, and that's it. I think people get confused with, I feel like there are hot takes on everything. And whoever it is, anyone sharing your space, sharing your time, your mental capacity, whatever, they do need to be feeding into you in some way. And it's okay. I think people think that's selfish or something like that. But I think to me, it's survival. Also, to me, it simply makes sense. But obviously, common sense ain't common among everybody, right?
Yeah.
Or it's so I think some people really start to say, "Oh, well, you're using them." Da, da, da. Yeah, you're using them if you just bleed them dry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
In that, I think there's something to be said about the hot take of like, you can't expect anything from anyone, right? Or you shouldn't expect anything from anyone. And that's not a belief that I ascribe to because within community, you should expect, right? Because we are in a mutually beneficial relationship where we get agreement. And to be in community is to be in a supportive group, right?
Yeah.
Support looks like offering, it looks like receiving and giving, right? And so I again will encourage folks to really interrogate their ideas of community. If you're in a space where you can speak up and share a need, if you're in a space where you can say, hey, today I don't have 100%, I have 80%, can somebody else handle the 20, right? You
Yeah.
should be able to say that because that's what a community is. It's a supportive network, and not just the network to be in to say that you are gathering with people.
Right. Not just going
Yeah.
out to eat.
Not going to brunch, not smoking hookah and
Right.
pictures on the grass wall,
Right.
right?
Wow. Yeah, but that's very accurate.
There's more to that. And I believe that like community really shines through in those moments where needs are high, right? Where there's one or two people who are saying, hey, I don't have it right now, right?
Mhm.
Community is when we can catch and hold and carry the underdeveloped parts of people, right? Or we're willing to say, no, I care about you, even though you've done X to offend me. Because we are in a relationship, I want to relate to you better. So let's have a conversation to talk through this, right? It's not the abandoning of people or treating people as if they're disposable and you could just throw them away and keep going on to the next group of people and the next group of people, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think that's where we may think that relationships are not work, right?
Right.
Now it could be hard work, it could be easy work, but it's going to require effort, right? And building a safe, flourishing community. Yeah, 100%. It's work. I have been there, and that reminds me of times where friends call me and say, "Man, I know you got a lot going on, blah blah blah." And I haven't said anything because I know you got something going on. And I always tell people, let me tell you, I'm gonna use you as my friend. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
gonna call you and I'm gonna say the things. How
Yeah.
many times have you heard me talk about X, Y, Z? So I'm like, please
Call me.
call me, tell me what's going on. I need to come over there. You
Yeah.
know,
I'm
it's
on my
the
way.
it's the
Yeah.
big and the little
Mhm.
things.
Yeah.
It's a really
And it's
big.
funny you say that it's work. I remember when I first relocated here to Mexico,
Mhm.
You talked in the beginning about like me expanding community from Houston to here. And I remember getting here and being like, don't nobody know my name. Don't nobody know who I am. Don't nobody know what I do. Don't nobody know where I'm from, you know? And I had a depressive spell for a while. I was lonely, really missed my community in Houston.
Mhm.
I would journal about this experience and I would often say, like, the only thing that feels absent or empty in this
Mhm.
Asian experience is community, right? And so for the first 6 months or so of this relocation, I was lamenting and like almost about to pack them 6 bags and come on back.
He said, I don't need this. Let me zip my
Yeah,
things and get out of
right.
here.
I thrive in community. And I remember just having this realization and saying, Jotina, if there is community, if it is community that you desire, it is going to require you to be intentional and to work, right? I was like, you got to get up, you got to get
Yeah.
outside of this apartment, you got to
Yeah.
go outside, you got to meet people, and you got to build new relationships,
Yeah.
right?
It's a real intentional effort. Like
Yeah,
you gotta
yeah,
push to do
yeah.
it. So you being um a yogi, right? How did that help kind of, or did it help in your quest to find community out there as an expat? Did it connect you with people from, okay, like my Houston people, they know somebody out here in Playa del Carmen, right? Like, how did that kind of help you build the community that you were looking for?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think that the duality of it is like being a business owner. I mean, yoga being a part of the work that I do, even within my business. I remember my business, we were activating at South by Southwest last year, and we'd come back from South by Southwest, and I was just in all of this energy, the energy that you have after you come back from
Mm-hmm.
the conference, and you just want
Mm-hmm.
to create something, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'd gotten back from South by, and the way that the Houston community drove to Austin and showed up, I was just like,
Okay.
right, and it was freezing cold. My activation was outside, and I mean, people are on their mats, in the cold. And I got back here and I said, Jotina, you have something that is uniquely special, and that something needs to show up here in Mexico as well. There was a hotel that I would visit often. And I said, I'm just going to go and talk to them and see like what their wellness programming looks like.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This was very early on. It was
Yeah.
in March. I went, I had a conversation with the owner, Sam. We're really good friends now. And I said, I'm a yoga teacher here looking to build community for the Black immigrant expats
Mm-hmm.
in this space. And I've noticed I go to yoga, but I noticed that most classes are in Spanish. While I can practice yoga in Spanish, I know that that's intimidating for some. I would love to bring some English speaking wellness to your hotel. And immediately he was like, absolutely, that fully aligns with our wellness programming. And in March of last year, I started teaching yoga in partnership with Cache Hotel here. And to see how people showed up every single Sunday and just was like, Jotina, when you gonna be there? I need to like looking forward to that. And it didn't just become yoga. That turned into, after yoga, we would go across the street to the juice bar, and it became this fellowship where we'd sit down and have conversation. And that, again, that connection and that relationship piece, and those conversations became more and more vulnerable. And so yoga definitely has been a pathway for me to do two things. One, to serve the people and serve myself, right? And I feel so very grateful for the opportunity to be in this practice and root myself and to stay grounded, but then to also offer and share in the ways that these opportunities keep showing up for me to share.
Standing in that dream and seeing a way made, especially when you said like I was ready to, pack your little raggedy duffel bag and head out. I think that's beautiful. It sounds like it was kind of it's kismet and also just a community activated like immediately. One of my questions for you was kind of the difference between a group and a community, right? So people would know if we just outside,
Yeah.
right? Just together doing whatever, or are we actually outside looking out for each other, invested? And I love that that group has turned into community.
Yeah, because groups are doorways, right? And pathways for community, right?
Mhm.
Gatherings are doorways and pathways for community. And you will have to do things that you don't normally do in order to see that door fling open. Much like this year for me here, I am a very private person when it comes to my house, right? Even
Mm-hmm.
when I was in Houston, everybody ain't coming over to the house. I love,
It's just, yeah, it's your space. It's
you
your
know, I
know-how.
love to
Yeah,
feed people. I will activate in community, but like people coming to my house is, has always been, that's been my space where I don't have to share myself with the world.
yeah,
Well, I come from a big family. I come from a cooking family. I come from, a family that's going to gather for every holiday. And
yeah.
we're in the WhatsApp groups. And I'm like, oh, okay. So how do you all normally celebrate Thanksgiving? And I'm just
Mm-hmm.
asking a question in the group. How do people celebrate Thanksgiving? There was this one young lady who's a massage therapist who comes over to give me massages here at the house.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, well, normally somebody hosts every year, but no one has stepped up to host this year.
Look at you being
Jotina,
inquisitive.
would you like to host? I've been to your house before, and it's really big
She said, "This might be the perfect spot."
in the group, right? Like in this WhatsApp group
Oh,
with 500 plus people, she asked me if I wanted to host Thanksgiving. And mind you, I've been praying for a community. I've been praying to find my people. And folks are gathering here, but usually they having parties, and I'm
yeah.
not a party girl.
Okay.
And so I was like, I want to gather with people, but going to the club and party ain't just my jam.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just been praying, like diligently praying for like my people and opportunities to foster community. And she asked me, I hopped on my Instagram poll, and share with Instagram and took them on this part of the journey with me. But that same day, I returned to her and said, yes, I'll host. It was 7 days before Thanksgiving, mind you.
Well,
And on Thanksgiving Day, here at my house, in Playa del Carmen, I had 60 Black and brown people. Only 8 of them I had met before
oh wow.
at my house. I mean, people had their moms and dads who were here visiting for the holidays, and both had their babies and families. And my daughter was here, my brother was here. And so building community will also require you to say yes sometimes to things that aren't always comfortable for you, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Intentionality. It will require you to work to foster those connections. I'm not a texter. I don't be on my phone like that, right? But I'm like, girl, if you gonna build these relationships, you gotta reply back to people.
You do.
You have to,
You do.
right?
You
It
do.
will require you to sometimes flex and shift and do the things that you would normally do to stay in that relationship and to show your commitment and effort to the group. Make
Yeah.
contribution, right? That fundamental
Yeah.
factor, contribution. And so I'm always asking myself, like, what are my contributions?
Mhm.
Supportive network that I'm a part of.
I love that. I joke all the time and I say, okay, like if the zombie apocalypse comes, what do you have to give to the group, right? Like some people you can garden, will need food. Like what? I'm like, okay, who's on the defense team? I jokingly joke with my friends about that all the time. But that contribution piece is so key.
Yeah.
It's so, so key. I always want to feel like I'm kind of pulling my own weight or
Mhm.
it's like pulling my own weight is probably a bad way to say that, but I want to always feel like I'm giving
Mhm.
and a person feels seen, right?
Mhm.
And so whatever that is, I know what I'm good at and I know what I'm bad at. Now,
Yeah. Yeah.
I have gotten kicked out of many a group chat. I'm not the best at coming back. Okay, I'm not. But if you need me, you can call me in the middle of the night and I'm show up. You know what I mean? Whatever you need, I'll be
Mhm.
there. And so I always want people to feel seen, and I have a thing where I want to feel reliable.
Yeah. Yeah.
To
And I
people.
think another part of that, and I didn't speak about this, another fundamental principle that we don't talk enough about is vulnerability and authenticity.
Mm.
Oftentimes when we go into space, sometimes we'll just kind of be a bystander or observer and just kind of look and listen and nod. But there's something to be said about like storytelling and story sharing and connecting those stories and sharing
Mhm.
in vulnerable was where people can catch you, right? where
Yeah.
and cradle you and hold you, and you can do the same for others. I believe with my whole heart that we are only as transformed as we are vulnerable, and if we are to be in transformative community, that first is preceded by our vulnerability.
I would just like to say to anybody listening to this,
Mm.
and jump in, Jotina, and tell me, okay, personally, I think I make my best connections one-on-one.
Yeah.
Right. I read there was a study where a professor was saying that connections are made better when you're standing side by side with the person and not across from them. And I thought about that, right?
Yeah.
If I'm sitting across from you, sometimes it's an expectation, intimidating, or whatever. Not me personally, but just people in general. People have said I'm intimidating, but that's just crazy. It's crazy talk. But I thought of that idea of being side by side, right? And I know I can be quiet.
Yeah.
I too, I'm a preacher's kid. So sometimes,
I ain't got nothing to say. I'm about to study listening.
listen, I'm just trying to mind my business. Okay. That's it. And my best friend is always like, girl, you could be a piece of furniture in the room. No one would know you there. I'm like, yeah, if it's nothing to say, I just don't want to just be out here yapping for no reason. Now, when I get started, it's a whole nother situation. But I thought about, if I'm at an art museum or something like that and I'm standing next to you, I can look at you and say, what do you think about that piece of artwork? Or like, what do you think about this food? And making those connections for a person that just may not be as chatty, I would encourage people to like find the space or figure out where you connect the best. I've been in large groups hosting events and all that other stuff, but I really realized, oh no, Joy, people get to know you because you've had to have some type of interaction with like this, or they needed a jump on their car, right? We got time to talk a little bit. I make my best connections in specific ways. I don't know if people are paying attention to that, but I would hope people do pay attention to kind of further build that community and that trust.
Yeah, yeah. And I love that you're pointing out the one-on-one connections, because oftentimes when we hear the word community, sometimes the picture that we get in our head is one whole group gathering all at once. And that is not solely indicative of what community looks like, right? Because most times that macro group, that large group, usually the relationships are built, right? Those relationships are built in those small spaces where you come together in silos and have those, tiny conversations. When we're done today, I have a new friend that's coming over for dinner tonight, and it's just the two of us, And I've done a lot of that since I've been here, right? Like, I want to know your story. I do want to be side by side with you and walk alongside of you, because the other part of that is trust and emotional safety. And that trust and emotional safety is usually built in the shoulder to shoulder, right?
Yeah.
That side by side. And I often say, like, when I walk into large rooms where there are, like many people, I like to be the first point of contact for someone, right? We're all in this large room. And most times if you say, hey, I love your hair, right? Or I like that sweater. That's a nice color you have on it. How's your day going today?
Yeah.
Usually when you break that ice, you break the seal of like discomfort for a person. And those are the moments that become like memorable for them. Like, you created a safe place for them to be like, oh, okay, somebody see me. Hey, girl,
Yeah.
and it be that, and so not discounting those small moments too. One, be an observer, look around the room, see the person that you may can see like they're experiencing some anxiety, may want to jump in and don't know the place, and be that person, right? To walk up, to break that seal of discomfort. And those experiences are experiences that I believe foster swift emotional safety.
What advice would you give someone building community? So in last season, I told people that they were bad at making friends. And I know it's terrible. Look, I'm the blunt friend. I will always be. I told people they were bad at making friends and it takes work. They understood by the end of the episode, if they really stuck with it.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to building community now, in person, or even since we're so digital now, right? Like, I love that being a point of contact, doing something different You've already said kind of stepping out of your own comfort zone. What other advice would you give people just trying to build community digitally or, tangibly in person?
Yeah. The piece of advice that I would give people looking to build community is to go deep, then wide. Oftentimes we look at quantity, like how big the network is, and it's really the depth that makes it sustainable, right? So even if it's two people, go deep, right?
Yeah.
And what you'll find is that that depth will grow its own tentacles, right? And start to become. I made one friend when I got here to Mexico, and that's Alicia McCullough. And Alicia was my only friend for a really long time. Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's been beautiful to see Alicia say, "Oh, Joe, there's someone I want you to meet.
Yeah.
There's someone whose work aligns with your work. Oh, I invited someone to yoga, right? From that one friend, right?
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
commitment to go deep there, it grew its own tentacles.
Mhm.
And Alicia, I would tell her all the time, girl, you can meet somebody new every day. And but her capacity is much more expansive than
Mhm.
mine. And I acknowledge that, right? And
Mhm.
and you don't have to manufacture parts of yourself to show up in community, right? I am an extrovert by default because of my career, but I'm an introverted personality. So if someone's an extrovert who's out there doing all the things, I don't have to try and manufacture extroversion in order to build community. I
Yeah.
can be authentic to who I am and do it the way that feels good and right for me. And what felt good and right for me was just building with Alicia, right?
Yeah.
For several months before I started to expand and go this way. And when I started to expand and go this way, those relationships started to find me. Right. And so go deep then wide is one piece of advice that I'll give. Have expectations. You do get to have expectations, but that expectation also comes with your own accountability and intentionality and your willingness to be able to also allow people to expect from you. Right.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that people expect from me. My Houston community, I don't care where I am in the world. What they know for sure is Ruyo Wellness and Jotina Bug, we gonna always create, for them.
Mhm.
They expect that. And they
Yeah.
can. And I want them to, right? Here in Playa, it's become the same thing. Somebody was like, girl, I miss yoga church. When is yoga church coming back? Because we gather on Sundays. It's fellowship. It's
Yeah.
community, right?
Yeah.
We were on our holiday break. They like, girl, we need yoga church back, right? And so be willing to expect from people and allow people to expect from you, right? Consistently interrogate your definition of community,
Mhm.
right? And be willing to define and redefine that, right? Over and over again. Community is also an awareness practice. Be aware of yourself and the ways in which you show up, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's not
That's
just
so
your
good. Yeah.
facing, it's you facing as well. And then connection, relationship, right? I believe that our lives move at the speed of relationships. Yeah. Yeah. Our
Love
lives
that.
move forward at the speed of relationships. Build healthy and sustainable relationships. We are living in a time right now where the collective is needed, right? There is a trust survival that's needed in order to survive this time, but not just survive this time, but thrive in this time. And there is something that I believe that we all have and can contribute, to community. It doesn't matter how big or small your contribution is, make it anyway. Yeah.
Make it anyway. I love that. Has there been any connection, anyone, anything, whatever,
Mhm.
that has stood out to you when it comes to building community? Anything or any person, unsuspected connections with people? Do you have an example where maybe stepping out of your comfort zone
Mhm.
kind of benefited you immediately? They say instant karma, which I feel like you stepping out of your comfort zone and actually going up to that hotel
Yeah.
in March and being like, hey, I'm gonna do the thing. And now, what did you say his name was? Sam?
Yeah, Sam, my friend.
And that right. And now you got Sam.
Yeah, and Sam and I are creating all kinds of wellness offerings for the people here in Playa, which I am grateful for and really appreciate. But there are two things that stand out to me. One on the Houston side and one on this side. One is I remember the starting of Yoga in the Fifth. That just started as a 6-week commitment to Fifth Ward's redevelopment and community revitalization act there at the Deluxe Theater. And, I started teaching with maybe 8 people or so, right? And when I prepared to relocate and we had our final yoga, we could barely fit in the room because there were 200 bodies that gathered for
That's beautiful.
that practice. And what was supposed to be 6 weeks turned into 2 years. And so that stands out to me because wasn't expecting that. And those people still today, I'm in life and love and supportive network and community with. And even some of those folks have made their way to Mexico to visit and to share in this space. That's one. And I believe the act of saying yes to inviting those 60 folk into my house, it started as 20, 20 became 30, 30 became 40. And on Thanksgiving Day, I was like taking my security extra plate so that they wouldn't say anything about things, but so many beautiful pockets of relationship with people I'd met for the very first time in my home gathering are developing and have developed from that space. Sometimes it's just that one yes, right, to the thing that's the scariest, right, or the most uncomfortable that opens a whole new world and a portal for expansion and possibility.
I love that. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. I consider you in my community, and I hope that we have an opportunity to go deep and be vulnerable and just get to know each other better. I appreciate you very much for kind of the time and the knowledge and the energy that you've brought. So I really appreciate that. I know everything in Mexico is going to be perfect, stateside also. If there's anything you need from me, let me know.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for fortifying the voice of Rudio Wellness, and even sharing this story of mine. This is my first time publicly sharing anything in this way about my journey and relocation to Mexico. So
wow.
Thank you for
I'm honored.
This way. Yeah, I share on my social media all the time, but so thank you for this opportunity to just give voice and color some of the experience that I think people have been getting pockets of by way of social media.
Tell the people where they can find you before I let you go. I want everybody to follow you and love on you and send all the energy. So tell the people where they can find you.
We are Root Yoke, and that's YOKE Wellness on all platforms. That's Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, any other platforms that exist. RootYokeWellness.com is our website. If you're looking for a therapist that get it, I'm her. I'm that girl that's serving Black folk and queer folk. And then if you're just interested in the fun parts of this journey and what's happening in my life personally, you can follow me, Jotina.Buck on Instagram and Jotina Buck on Facebook. So that's where you can find me.
Thank you so much, Jotina. Yes. I appreciate it so much. As usual, don't forget to check out this episode's playlist on Spotify or YouTube by clicking the link in the bio.